Welcome to the Vikings Now. I am your host for today's show, Patrick Seatman. We're going to be talking about the latest around Dalvin Cook and Za'Darius Smith because Jeremy Fowler from ESPN, he put out a report today that Dalvin Cook could actually be cut ahead of the NFL draft. And then also Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, the Vikings GM, talked about Za'Darius Smith. Then we're going to touch on the wide receiver 2 drama around K.J. Osborn because he's kind of had this little Twitter beef going on with Rick Sosa, Vikings beef reporter. And I'll say it right now, I'm completely on KJ's side. But before we get into all that, we are actually in a sub-battle with Broncos Breakdown and Saints Now, 2 other chat sports channels. We got a little race going on, the 15,000 subscribers. Right now, we got a pretty decent catching up to do. So just go down there, hit that subscribe button. It's free, and it's a quick and very, very easy way to just help us out here on Vikings Now, and we really appreciate it. Plus, makes me look pretty damn good for my bosses. Now, the report about Dalvin Cook that did come out was that the Vikings could cut Pro Bowl running back Dalvin Cook by draft time per Jeremy Fowler of ESPN. And I've been kind of saying this for the past couple weeks. I will be shocked if Dalvin Cook is on this Vikings roster when it is time for the 2023 NFL regular season to get going. Just mainly because our GM, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, he's a huge analytical-driven GM. And we did re-sign Alexander Mattison, so bringing back Dalvin Cook doesn't make too much sense. But over the past 4 seasons, we have seen Dalvin Cook kind of take that step back. I mean, that 2020 season he had, you could have made the argument he was the best running back in the National Football League. I mean, just under 1,600 yards, over 5 yards per carry. But the yards per carry has gone down each of the last 3 seasons. And this past year, sitting at only 4.4 yards per carry. But this is the stat I want to show for you guys right now. The rushing yards over expected. I've shown you guys this a couple of times on the show recently. But back in 2020, and this stat is pretty much every rush that is attempted by Dalvin Cook or any running back in the NFL, they kind of give an expected amount of yards they expect that running back to gain. And in 2020, Dalvin Cook had 0.81 yards more than expected. But this past season, for the first time in his career, he was in the negative. And I just think Dalvin Cook, he is still a solid running back, but he's not having that top 5, top 10 kind of burst in talent that we've seen in years past. And in this Vikings running back room right now, obviously, like I mentioned, bringing back Alexander Mattison, that's a big indication to me that I don't think Dalvin Cook will be on this roster. And then you still have guys like Kene Nwangwu and Ty Chandler. Ty Chandler, the 6th-round draft pick from North Carolina last year, I think he's got a ton of potential. So do I think, would Kwesi want to give up $20+ million this next upcoming year just to the running back position, considering the tight end position is going to have $20 million+ there as well? I don't think so. I got some more thoughts on this in a second, but I'll let you guys answer today's pinned comment. Do you want to cut Dalvin Cook? If you're Kwesi, you got the kind of decision right on your desk right there. Give me a C for cut or give me a P for pass. It will be the pinned comment on today's video. So if you guys get hit with a YouTube ad break, let it play. Go down there, answer today's pinned comment. Now, the cap savings are a big part of this, obviously. Obviously, now the Vikings could only cut him as a post-June 1st cut. Wouldn't really make sense for them, at least my guess, would be to cut him and have it be a pre-June 1st cut, sorry. And they would save $9 million by doing so, which the Vikings right now, they're last in the league in cap space in the NFL. I mean, they have $1 million right now to spend on whatever, and obviously you're going to have to pay your draft picks and such. So I think the Vikings cutting Dalvin Cook, I think it makes too much sense cap-wise, and honestly, the production hasn't been there as it has in years past. Now we're going to get into the latest around Za'Darius Smith because Vikings GM Kwesi, he did talk about Za'Darius Smith, and he kind of gave a typical kind of GM talk when he was talking about it. This is what he said. He said, conversations are ongoing, and we try to be solutions-oriented. That is it. That is all he had to give when a reporter asked him about why Za'Darius Smith is still on the roster, because Za'Darius Smith, during NFL free agency when it first started, he came out and said, I want to be cut or traded by the Minnesota Vikings. And nothing really else has came out from that. But Za'Darius this past season, listen, he was all right, especially at the beginning of the season. Za'Darius was great. He was actually leading the league in sacks for a little bit in the midway point of the season, but he has definitely taken a step back. In the later half of the year, whether it was injuries or whatever it may be, he just wasn't really the same guy as he was in the first half of the season. 10 sacks, 15 tackles for loss, and 44 tackles for Za'Darius in 2022. But my opinion, I don't really think the Vikings need Za'Darius Smith. I think the signing of Marcus Davenport in free agency Again, another huge indicator that I don't think the Vikings plan on bringing Za'Darius back. I think this could be a situation, and very similar with Cook, where the Vikings could be sitting there on draft night, and maybe they have a second or third or fourth round prospect that they really like. And maybe they're sitting there saying we could trade Za'Darius, trade Dalvin Cook, even though they're very still talented football players, but you could just get kind of draft compensation that the Vikings need because they only do have 5 picks in this year's upcoming draft. But guys, be the GM for me. Will Za'Darius Smith get cut? This is a prediction for you guys. Type Y for yes or type N for no. I think he's going to get cut. Rather than getting traded, that's just kind of my guess here on the whole thing, because honestly, I don't think his trade value is too high anymore due to his contract and everything. So I'll be typing my Y for yes. But guys, we do have a great deal going on here at Fanatics. And if you go to chatsports.com/Vikings draft, you can get one of these sweet Vikings draft hats. They got the curved brim, and obviously they got the flat brim on screen right now. These designs, compared to years past, are honestly way better. I mean, the past couple years, they're kind of ugly. I wouldn't really have rocked them, but these, I love them. I think the design is great. I love the gray with this purple right here. It really makes the purple and gold pop on the hat. If you want to get one too, go to chatsports.com/Vikings draft. Now let's talk about probably my favorite story on today's show. What's going on with K.J. Osborn? Because he kind of got in this Twitter beef with Rick Sosa on Twitter, and it is absolutely hilarious. I mean, K.J. Osborn, he's been a very solid piece for the Vikings over his past 3 seasons in Minnesota. He's kind of taken a step up every single year, and he's just been a really good guy. So this is when it starts off. So Rick Sosa, he's a Vikings beat reporter. He runs a Vikings podcast with a couple of other guys, and he said, the Vikings have no quality wide receivers beyond Jefferson. No quality CBs beyond Murphy, and are thin at linebacker and interior offensive line and have only 5 picks. But somehow they should draft a QB at 23 or move up to draft him because some don't like Kirk Cousins. Pretty much Rick Sosa, he's the biggest Kirk Cousins defender out there on Twitter right now, and he was just kind of getting to the point because he's seen a lot of guys saying the Vikings should take Hendon Hooker if another quarterback falls to him at 23, and he was just kind of defending Kirk. But then KJ responded to this and said, hey, Rick, sorry to bother you. Just taking some notes here. Can you please describe your definition of quality for me, please? Just curious, just because Rick Sosa obviously said the Vikings don't have another quality wide receiver besides K.J. Osborn. I completely disagree. KJ this past season, 650 yards, 5 touchdowns. Obviously, these stats aren't going to scream he could be a great wide receiver too in the league, but last season, he was necessarily the 4th option on every single passing down. Obviously, you had Jefferson, then you had T.J. Hawkinson, then you had Adam Thielen, and KJ stepping up as a wide receiver 4 and a 4th option in this passing game for the Vikings, giving 650 yards, 5 touchdowns in year 3 of his NFL career. Listen, I'm going to ride with K.J. Osborn as a wide receiver 2 for next season, because also 2 key signings the Vikings did make in free agency. You signed Josh Oliver, the best blocking tight end in the NFL, to be your tight end 2 next to T.J. Hawkinson, and you paid him a good amount of money to do so. You obviously also re-signed C.J. Ham. I think the Vikings are going to be sitting in a lot of 22 and 12 personnel this year. And then when they are in that 12 personnel, if it's Josh Oliver, T.J. Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson, and then K.J. Osborn as that wide receiver 2, I think the Vikings should ride with KJ. I just don't really necessarily agree with Rick Sosa that wide receiver 2 is a necessarily position of need for the Vikings heading into the NFL draft. I'm out on drafting wide receiver in round 1 unless obviously you have a guy like, maybe the Vikings are really big on a guy like Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, whatever it may be. But I want to see KJ Osborn as that wide receiver 2 next season. I think he's earned it, and I think he could really excel in that position. But guys, get down in the comments. Spam 17 to show KJ Osborn some support. You got some Twitter nerds out there saying he's not a quality wide receiver. Go down there, give me a 17 in the comment section. And as always, Skol Vikes.